There is a social system that is existing in this country. Can we make systemic changes through investments in social capital? Now, what is the meaning of the social capital? So, first of all, can we make the right kind of investments in social capital of this country? If we want to know what those investments are, first we have to understand what the social capital is. In the narrow sense of the word, it is actually social capital for the company. Goodwill, brand image, that is still living in the past of wanting to do compliance or an exploitative method of using compliance just for your own namesake. Whereas, if you broaden it out from just pure self-interest to enlightened self-interest, I'll just give you a couple of examples. Suppose you invested in the environment. Everybody knows about water and its problems. Everybody knows about air and its problems. Better health is a social capital of the country as a whole. Everybody benefits. The larger public good. Similarly, the inequity between our society, the rich and the poor, is just going on expanding every year. So if a company invests in education, in skill building, in income generation, when the lower strata of society starts earning a better income, you reduce the inequities. Social tensions reduce.
It's great that we have a low level of poverty, but 850 million people still are dependent on incomes of less than $2 per day. There is still 150 million cases of child labor that we know of. There are millions, 30 I think is the statistic, million cases of bonded labor globally. Slavery is still a reality in the 21st century. The plastics that we use and discard have become the symbols of a throwaway society. We are consuming 40% more of the world's resources than we did 40 years ago, but only 12% or 7% of them are recycled. Plastic waste will replace the amount of fish by weight in the oceans by 2050. And this is not necessarily the easiest thing to say just after a beautiful lunch, but each one of us will defecate one credit card of plastic each week. We're consuming it. So at the global level, yes, things are great. That cruise ship that we're all on is sailing into the sunset, but it's not necessarily the picture that we are actually experiencing today. So what do we do about this problem? At the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, for the last 7 years, we have been demanding that business moves to business not as usual and radically overhauls the way in which it perceives its business models and its concept of value.
It's an amazing collaboration between Australia and India, and at its heart is the social capital. So when we say social capital, what do we mean by social capital? Firstly, at Rio Tinto, it's really the social license or our license to operate on the land and within the communities where we have our projects. And indeed, we can take that further, as I'll illustrate in this one product case, where we can take it beyond into the manufacturing of the product and the end product, and how we can contribute to society and communities. Now, when we discover an asset, we start working with the local community in the early stages of planning of the mine, in the construction of the mine, how we'll construct it, how we will utilize that land, and how we can integrate people in enjoying and being part of the share of that asset. And that begins really with early training of people and integration. It takes 7 to 10 years to build an asset, and in that time, we can actually integrate, train local communities, local businesses, so that they can restructure and they can actually benefit then from that asset.
Is that individuals, when we talk about, do not have that capacity of social capital that we talk about. Maximizing social capital. And maximizing social capital is basically that functional group. It is that interpersonal relationships that need to be developed as a functional group. And to answer that question of what George had initially put into being is the P of partnership. Individually we cannot do. Collectivization, or when we talk about collaborations, what we just heard of is something which is a reality. It's a very big challenge. It's in SDG 17 when we talk about partnerships. Collaborations have not been talked about much, but it is implied by partnerships. And I think to ask two competitors of steel manufacturers to collaborate in some kind of an activity is a very big challenge. It is the right thing to do, but it is a very difficult thing to do. And I think it's us, practitioners in the social space, that we need to start the third piece of perseverance. We've got to keep on persevering toward the achievement of that goal and make it a programmatic issue.